our spirit. What is it? Where does it go? Are we able to see them using our mind's eye? If so, just what can spirit teach us? Welcome to School Through Spirit. Host DeEtte Renee is a certified psychic medium and master teacher of psychic and mediumship development through LWISSD. DeEtte was born knowing spirit and now is here to help you better understand the spirit world. And now your host, DeEtte Renee.
Good morning. Welcome everybody to School Through Spirit. I am DeEtte here on the Edge Network, and this morning we have our special guest, Miss Heather Roan Robbins. She is an author. She is a creator of a beautiful set of oracle cards. She is she does this. Oh my gosh, I'm getting lost to my own words here. She's an astrologer. I highlighted her deck actually last quarter or last period of time. So, and this was it. I loved it, guys. Sorry, I'm all over the place this morning, but it is Starcodes AstroOracle. I love this deck so much that we had to put it into the magazine also as that reading for the month. This deck really blew me away because not only was it a beautiful oracle deck, but it was also astrology. It has a lot of education in there. To me, for me being a beginner with astrology, because as everybody knows, I don't do astrology, but it was really easy to navigate these cards. She's also written a book with this. She's a Hay House author and just a beautiful person altogether. And I really wanted to have this opportunity just to bring her on. So with that being said, and me not mixing any more words than I've already tripped all over, let's bring on Heather. Hello, Miss Heather.
Hello, and good morning. Yes.
Good morning.
And I love the potbelly stove, which is our background. That's beautiful.
I love the old school houses. I think we learned more back in old school houses than we ever did in anything modern. You know, it was about life and just living and just some of the basics just to get through, but you know, so much more about everything else. So, you know, tell me a little bit about you, Heather. I know you're an astrologer. I know you're beautiful at this. I know your artwork is amazing. So
thank you. And an artwork, I worked with an artist who is a tattoo artist from Brazil living in Melbourne, Australia, who did the artwork for those cards because I wanted something that's a little kind of edgier and kind of more thoughtful than a lot of astrological art, which can be a little spacey. So to speak. Right. So I wanted something that had reality. To me, I've been working with astrology. The family joke is that my father was an abstract mathematician. My mother was a psychiatric nurse. Put them in a blender and you get an astrologer. But it was, I started studying astrology in high school. And that was, by the way, a very long time ago because the niece of a famous astrologer worked as the telephone operator and the switchboard person, that's how old it was, and at our school. And she was a better counselor with her books open. She was an astrologer herself than the school psychologist was. People got more from her relationship than they did with this guy. And I was kind of hanging around her and trying to get more information. And she was one year going, oh dear. And she said, I'm a little worried. This is kind of a tricky weekend. And saw her talk to two teachers and go, could you just be a little careful this weekend? And one was an elderly man who was also the drama coach who died of a heart attack on stage that weekend. And the other was a young man who fell down and broke his leg.
Okay.
And I wanted to tell me more, tell me everything you know. And I said, but everybody else was fine. They said, yeah, it was very specific, the challenges they were going through. And you know, I think the elderly man was 84 and was perfectly happy to die on stage. If he was going to go, that was his exit. So don't consider that part of tragedy. The young man was not paying attention and he admits it. But I wanted to kind of know what this language was. And so I started looking up the planets of everybody I met. And I worked in personnel, I worked in natural foods, I worked at a spa, I did the personnel, I did all the charts of everybody. That was in my 20s. And then I started doing it more professionally doing it. And I've been writing after being an astrologer for so long. I moved to New Mexico and lived in Santa Fe, where their astrologers can be a dime a dozen. There are hundreds. It is close to Newcastle, but it's also a fascinating place to learn. I got to learn from some of the best. We exchanging ideas, working with them on collaboration. We would do a talk on the astrology of the year ahead every December, and we'd pack in several hundred people in a small town because so many people used it, but also could give us feedback, say, no, you're wrong. Their living experience was active feedback for us. I started writing Starcodes column 30 years ago, and in the newspapers in New Mexico, it has appeared every week, every Friday, in their Arts and Leisure magazine for 30 some years, and then started online. Every week I kind of predict what's the next week's going to feel like. You can find it online or, on my Facebook page, or a few other places, and on the Edge website.
Yep.
And every week I find out what actually happened. So I make that prediction and then I find out. I've been writing for Wee Moon Calendar, doing a year prediction, which has to be done a year ahead of time because it takes them a year to translate and publish and get out. And they send it. So every year I predict what it's going to be like in 2 years, and then I see what happens, and how close I am or how far apart, which has fine-tuned my understanding of it and the amazingly different ways we can live out astrology. Because it always comes back to what I find, how I do astrology different than a lot of others, is not predictive. It talks about a pattern, but we have choice about how to live out that pattern. And that's one of the reasons why I built the Starcodes deck, was to help people see the different ways they could manifest it. Every sign, every aspect, every planet has a gift, it has a practical side, and it has a challenge. And often, if you really tune into it, you can find a way to live out the gift and not have to get schooled by the challenge, but to take it not as a punishment, but as a schooling, a learning, however you have it. So I don't want to be Pollyannic about it. There are no bad aspects, but there are ways to use every single aspect that can divert the energy like a river. You can reroute it. You can't stop it. So that's where my approach to astrology came from.
I truly, truly love that, because I always speak to people about that, especially that last portion that you just talked about kind of like grow up and change your attitude is what I love to tell grown-ups, change your attitude, because it's there's nothing bad. There's no bad choices. There's no bad avenues. It is what it is at this point. And just take it as a lesson that's going to really evolve your soul. And sometimes the harder lessons are really more of an evolution. And that's in my work.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And sometimes the lesson may be, don't do that again. But you can say, how else can I live that energy out? You can learn from the past, but there's no point in hurting ourselves from the past.
And to me, when I look at your ability to do this, your gift, and I'm going to say astrology, everybody always says that astrology is really about learning, and it is. I've never wanted to delve into it. I tipped my toes in before computers really came on, and I tipped them right back out. To me, it was just
computers were a blessing. Yeah,
it was a lot.
It is a lot, and it's pattern recognition. And whatever patterns speak to you, I study the stars. I also study palmistry. I've got a book out on that. How the patterns live out, and how our hands change over time when we change our mindset. And all of those, whatever patterns we're used to recognizing. Now you work with spirit. You pick up patterns of the subtle talk directly from spirit, but that's a pattern recognition too. You kind of like, what symbols have you developed to open up that communication? What ways of understanding? And I think that everybody has ways. My brother reads cars. He
Yeah.
is an intuitive car mechanic, and he can tell you by the sound of coming around the corner what's wrong with the car, or he used to.
Mm-hmm.
And that everybody, well, like, where do you put your intuition?
Yeah.
A doctor has to go to medical school, and they have to be able to do the science of it. And
Right.
then they need their intuition to help them put all those pieces together quickly on the
Mm-hmm.
spot to intuit the process. So I think
Yeah.
learning our craft, whatever craft appeals to us, and
Mm-hmm.
then really opening up to spirit through that
I
is
love that.
key.
So I know, like with my craft, it evolves
Mhm,
and it changes all the time. When I first
mhm.
really learned and kind of honed my skills, I was in one area, and obviously as you grow, as you learn, it's going to change a little bit. And for me, it's ever changing, and now the changes are very drastic. Do you find those changes with you within astrology also, or does it still just kind of stay the science of the stars and
Oh,
just
no, it comes through, your understanding of people changes how you read those symbols. It
Mhm.
deepens, it grows, it opens. I come to understand new patterns. All of that is definitely an evolving part. And there's
I
always
love that.
changes in the field of astrology too, to
Yeah.
understand.
I love that because, well, like, people don't know right before we got on the show, Heather was looking at my chart and telling me some really dynamic things. And like I told her, I said, oh my gosh. I mean, I've had people read my chart and I usually get, oh my gosh, you're a hot mess. I wouldn't want your life. Or they start laughing. They're like, oh my God, the stuff in your life. Like, and so to get the details, you really break it down. You really break it down to that nitty gritty to say, hey, this is what it's not just that this is a, you know, a, you know, I guess for lack of better terminology, people have said this is a life that I've decided to level up on. I packed so much in there that it was like, whether this was finishing past lives, finishing lessons, whatever this might be, but very much a life to kind of up level my soul, where you were explaining some things like, oh my gosh, this is why this was going on. This is why, and that blew me away because I've never gotten that. This is why you wanted to be alone as a child. This
I
is why you
love my
wanted
work.
this,
Yes, right.
or hey, spirit raised you, all of those wonderful things, to hear those, it's like, oh, that makes sense. And now you have a key to a door to open up, which is beautiful.
Exactly. There's no point in leaving. I mean, the only point to doing any of this work is to open up your possibilities, is to empower you, and is to
Yes.
help you reframe it in a way where you feel the flow, the how spirit's been working, how lives have been working through you, or I don't help anybody just to limit their expectations. I don't like questions like, when will I meet my partner? It's more like, how can I meet my partner? What do I need to do to heal? Where do I need to invest myself in the world? How can I engage that and empower them to not be passive about it? It's not just timing.
Right. I love that because, like, for me, I don't seek out readings very much. I don't know why. I think
Understand
I've
that?
suited. I
Mhm.
went through my period of seeking out readings. Um, but I always laugh because it's like I'm going to be sitting down with a trance medium soon, and they always want to come with questions, and I'm like, I never do. And thank God, her God knows who I am because I just show up and goes, oh, you're just here to listen. Whatever you have to tell me, and because I'm very spontaneous in that. What do I need to know?
Mhm.
It's so that's for myself. That's how I always work it because I always think I get the best and the most for me if I come in that way. You
At the
know,
same time, when I look at a chart, I say, think what you want to know, because there's so much information in a chart that
yeah,
and you're not going to hear things that you're not interested in right now.
right.
So that's one reason why I say, why did you come?
Hmm.
Because that whatever you say can be the hook that I begin to build everything else on. And it
Very.
allows us to kind of go deeper into it quickly. But if
Oh,
people just want us to talk, we can just go over how the chart works, and that's empowering. But at some point, I'm going to say, and where do you want to take this?
yeah,
Because your questions will be the easiest way. What you're really curious about will be the
right,
easiest way for this information to go into you, and it allows me a question to kind of go digging into this large pattern because I'm
right.
looking at layers.
I love.
And
I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I've never looked at it that way. I've never looked at it that way. And I think it's because within my own readings, I just try to cover everything. Talk very fast, cover it all, go home.
Right. And that works.
It works. It
But
works in
usually,
my realm. It works in
and
my realm. It may not work in everybody's.
I think it does. And people go home and they listen to it 3 years later. They go, "Oh, that's what she said," because it won't make that much sense at the moment necessarily, but it will over time.
Yes.
And that's however you do it. There's never been. I mean, there's no wrong reading. If the truth is coming through, how do we hear it? But I found that I have done, 2-hour readings where I've done every detail of the chart, and they just wanted to know when their boyfriend was coming back. And I've given them 2 hours and they're not hearing it.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's recorded, so, especially
can
these
go
days
back.
when Zoom does wonderfully, we can record it beautifully for them, and they have
Yeah.
the charts, but that if, their contentment with the reading or their use of the reading will depend upon how much I met what they came for.
Right.
And that is, we used to do when in the astrological talks of the year, some of the astrologers would come and they would talk about all these fascinating things, but they weren't talking about the year ahead. And the audience would give them bad marks when I escorted afterwards, because they came to hear about the year ahead. They didn't come to hear about some twist of politics that wasn't their thing, which was fascinating if you're interested in the astrological patterns, but not what they came for. So I find that matching, expectations with content gets contentment, and people hear it better. So if I can find out what they're curious about, they hear what else I'm having to say through that opening. So that's why I ask.
Oh, I
But
love that.
I think if I love it when readers just dump at me and I've got it and I can go back later and hear the layers.
Yeah. Now I do have a question, because I was looking, you have all these wonderful different readings, on your website. You got star code readings, personal readings, relationships, locations, business charts. I love all that. It's offering so much. Now, one thing, because it's like in the personal, I know a lot of people will come to me because they want guidance to kind of figure out or how to help them overcome some obstacles, maybe lifelong obstacles that they've had. Now, can astrology also help with that? Like, oh my gosh, this is where this is at, and this is how you can change this.
Right. That's that's where I love to go is, here's the lifelong patterns. Here is, we looked at your chart. You had, it looks like some loneliness as a child and were raised by spirit.
Right.
But that developed in you an ability to talk to spirit, to hear it, to roll with the difficult things, and to handle emergencies well, and that you came out of that with a desire to be fully alive with that Sagittarius lineup. So you handled that pattern well, but there's that pattern. If there is, for the last 2 years, Pluto has been talking to your sun. It is just getting off this month for the first time, and it's going back and forth because Pluto takes 248 years around the zodiac. Pluto itself as a planet. I mean, so Pluto, America just went through its Pluto return on January 6th, 2020. It went through this kind of power struggle about what is power here in our country. Pluto talks about death, rebirth, and how we use power. And it's, there's interesting reasons. We think that Pluto, that all echoes in the universe. Pluto did not seem to be born at the same time as the rest of our solar system. It was part of a larger, the pattern, the Oort belt around us, and came in. And so all the planets spin on this cycle. Pluto spins like this, very far out. And it was something, died as it was, and was reborn as a planet in our solar system. So that symbol is pretty powerful. And, Pluto was right at the bottom of the chart. I kind of saw that as echoing around you when you were born. And Pluto has been squaring you've been conjunct your sun. It's only moved from there in your lifetime. And you're, for the last couple of years, there's probably been some dark and difficult moments, but some empowering moments and some places where you made sense of all the bigger patterns and have come out with, people often do their best right after Pluto transits. Like they have burnt off the dross and they've kind of find new purpose and they've focused a new direction. So it'll be interesting to see.
And that's, I mean, I will tell you what, that's 110% true, because this last 2 years, I have said, I am so grateful I've gone through them, but God, I never want to go through those again, because they've been really life-changing. They have been forcing me to look in the mirror and see my inner self, which has really been nice. But it's only been the last couple of days that I've went, oh, I feel relief. I feel freedom. Like
Pluto is finally getting off that sun. Right.
I literally wrote to a friend the other day in a text message. They're like, how you doing? I said, oh my gosh, I'm amazing. For the first time in months, if not forever, I feel like freedom. Like I am ready to dive into work. I am ready. I don't feel like I'm being in a chokehold anymore. And I'm like,
you were for the last 2 years, you're kind of coming back to some original issues that were there when you were born, and that you've been doing that good, deep work. You'll really notice it in about 2 years when your progressment goes into Sagittarius, and it'll be not a second adolescence, but a new life, kind of coming back alive and willing to travel and do things. But this is a really good time for good, deep work right now. So good work.
It's been amazing. I'll tell you, it's been hard.
You chose to use it to really look at that chokehold, to reassess and to find what you needed to do. Some people would go through that and just go, life sucks and it's all wrong and I'm going to eat worms, and not choose to use it for deep work. And that's our choice. It will still burn through the karma, but if we can come to it with what am I doing down here? What am I learning? How can I introspect and work with this so that I can grow from it? Then it's a gift. And you used it as a gift.
But I will tell you what, if it wasn't for astrology, I probably would not have looked at it that way. And it was literally because I'd worked with an astrologer probably 3-4 years ago.
Who said, you're heading into this Pluto transit.
Well, and not even that. She just went, oh my gosh, your life. And that's when she said, you're in 0 degree Aquarius. She said, you've got the yacht in your chart. She said, you pack so much in there that this life is really about evolving and doing that. I had a reading with a beautiful psychic that went, oh my gosh, 222s all over. I'm like, yeah, that's the number I see. And I'm like, it's about balance. She goes, no, for you, it's about mastery, and you're going through this stuff to master it. So to me, it made sense that when I went into this was in the stars. This was in my soul contract. This was in it for me to go, okay, I can either buck this and come back next lifetime, or I can do it now. Let's just do it now.
Let's just do it now. And that's what I see. The toughest charts are often somebody kind of went and said, could I just burn through several hundred years of karma in one lifetime? Could I burn like 1,000 go? And you can almost hear the universe going, are you sure? And that it's not, because so it said, was I so bad in the last life? I said, no, honey, you weren't. You just said, can I evolve fast because I've seen what it can be like. And so you are burning through a lot and coming to understand a lot in a very short period of time. But that's not because you've been bad, but because you've chosen to heal and make progress this lifetime.
And I think that's beautiful. And honestly, I think more people should do it this way. Boy, we'd be a hot mess, wouldn't we?
No, we'd be rather intense. But no, that kind of that is
out there to go. It's not so bad,
right? And that it's but that's some people you see not doing that much this lifetime. And but when you look at their chart, you see, oh, this is a resting lifetime. Last one was hellacious, and they just need to take a deep breath. And that's helped me not be judgmental of the rate at which people choose to focus on it. I'm trusting the process that they will unfolding their life in a way that works for them is just what their soul needs. and I am not to judge, or they're not doing it fast enough, or they're not doing it intensely enough. Just because you and I chose the steep cliff doesn't mean that that's the right thing, right path for others.
Yeah, not everybody needs to jump off it. So are you able to see past lives with astrology?
I see hints. You see, when you see, I see issues that came up last lifetime. There's a couple of places that you look for that. In the south node, where the moon goes north and south over the equator the day the person was born. And that talks about what you've brought in from other lives, gifts and challenges. And for instance, yours is in Leo, and your south node in Leo would say, keep taking care of your heart and liver is important. But it would also say that you saw what it was like to be, to have attention, to be in the center, to be in some form of leadership position when in another lifetime, and you saw some of the difficulties of being in that. So you came in going, could I have some privacy first? And you went to that Scorpio moon where it was hard to feel seen as a child. And then, but you brought in the skills of knowing how to be a Leo in a good way. The Leo in a good way is the ability to shine and to be a hearth fire, to shine in a way that brings others to you.
Right.
And to be able to shine for the benefit of all. I always say the gift, every planet, every sign has a gift and a challenge. Leo, the gift is, I am the center of the universe, and so are you. And the center in me honors the center in you. And the lethal side of Leo is, I am the center of the universe, and you are not. That's the other side. But that real gift of seeing the spark within others is a real gift from a positive Leo. And so that you came in with that knowledge, but are here to understand how shining can help the collective, can help the group of people. You have North Node in Aquarius, and that's where that ability to kind of serve the community is what your direction. With the other things that you see with the separation is when an aspect was exact and it's moving past that. That talks about something that you will still feel, but if you ask the kid about their life, the story is not there. The story has already happened. Like you were born after the tight square of the sun and moon. So some of the issues that you walked into were already in place when you were born. What you see is you can't tell if it happened from a past life or was already happening in the family. But I think it's this one and the same. If you die in the middle of a war, you may be born in the middle of a family feud. You can resolving conflict. Or if you had a great loss in the last life, or what it looks like that your heart is healing from something like that, you're often born into a family mourning. And that, so the soul issue gets taken forward whether or not you know it. That don't worry, you'll have to do your work anyway, whether you know where it came from. But it works. So you can see, if you see recently separating aspects, you have a Venus Neptune. Both they're conjunct, but they're not too far. They're not too close. Venus is pulling away from that conjunction, and that would say in other lifetimes you have loved, but been not always seen clearly. You could see the potential in people, but you didn't see who they fully were. That you might be more easily bamboozled. That you had loved spirit, you see potential in people. This lifetime, you're a little bit more aware of, I see potential, but let me see if you're there yet. A little bit more, a little bit less easily bamboozled that you might have been in another lifetime. That the issues of trusting people, you see the gift of it, but you know that to really love someone, you have to see all of their faults and be honest about them. And
I love that.
So that's an example.
I love that. That's a beautiful example. And it's exactly what I was wondering, because so many people and these are questions I get because of my line of work, and now I'm seeing how they really kind of join, because like in my line of work, because you brought up a lot of my birth, my birth. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I teach people that, when they want to come into the embodiment, into a body again, one of the things they do is pick the date, the place, the time, everything. And so astrology kind of matches up to it.
Right.
And I always laugh about this because I teach it and I believe it 110%. I do believe it, but I always laugh because my mother will look at me and go, DeEtte, you were 3 weeks late. Yes, I was. And then 3 days of labor before they had to force you out of my belly through C-section. And I'm thinking, you know what? That's a whole lot of pushing to make sure I was born exactly when I was supposed to be born,
Right. Right. And and I can understand, you knew you were coming into a life. It's like, do I really want to come in there? It also explains why it looks like your mom had postpartum depression. And that's one reason why she was not emotionally available right at the get-go. And you got, because she was dealing with that tough birth. That can really take a lot out of you.
Yep, she was dealing with a whole lot of stuff, and so I've always understood. Well, I can't say I always understood it. It wasn't until this last 2 years I started to understand some stuff, So I love that. Now, we've talked a lot about astrology, and I want to come back to it, but you talked about something that truly interests me along with astrology, but it's palmistry. It's palmistry. And to me, again, it's not another skill. As you notice, I love spirit. To me, it's just, I know it's my lane. You know what I mean? I know it's my lane. Oh my God, I love the everyday palmistry. Oh my God, I love that.
I'm working on another one, but it's designed for palmistry for people that are not palmists, that just shake people's hands and see people wave and, deal with life, because we always have our hands with us.
We do.
So
right. I love it because for me, I look at it and they're just palms, but I had the beautiful ability and opportunity to get her palmistry reading like 3 years ago to Renaissance Fair. Everybody kept telling me for years, you have to go see this lady. You have to go see this lady. So I finally went to the Run Fair after 20 years and I sought her out and I had to wake all day. And she looked at my palms and she told me about spirit. And it was like a blah, whatever. I mean, both my palms at that time were pretty close to the same. She was like, yep, you're a follower, this, that, the other, whatever. Well, I started that beginning of that stuff, and I came back a year later and she looked at my hands and she goes, oh, number one, she'd remembered me by my left palm, but she goes, your life has just 180 turned. And this palm is now completely different from this one. And then I went back the next year. She remembered me by my palms. And then she noted how this palm has actually grown. It's increased in size.
I used to do ink prints of people's hands. I lost it all in a flood, but I had years and years of watching my children's hands as they were growing up, how every time they develop a skill or pull back from the world, it would change. How when people make a decision, their lines change. Now, you won't see them completely change, but you will see lifelines grow. You'll see the little covering lines clear up. You'll see new focus come. You'll see reaching out or shrinking back from situations. And again, this isn't always, you might see people with very long lifelines get on a plane and have it crash. Sometimes it's not their action that did that. This is more how the consequences, you may see that in all of their charts, but you would not see that in their hands. This is what they're doing with it. I think of astrology as how they are in the big picture, but not how they've chosen to respond to it. We choose how we respond to the aspects. This is how they've chosen to respond. So I look at their chart, I look at their hand and go like, okay, this is what you're doing with your chart, or you haven't begun to live up to this potential. See it on one hand and see it on the other, or how much have you overcome by you looking at the dominant hand versus the passive hand.
I love that, because it was interesting to me because 5-6 years, well, more than 5 or 6 years ago, I had to have fingerprint testing because I was a nurse and I was going into nuclear plants and things like that. Great fingerprints. Now, even computer generated, they can barely find my fingerprints. Like they're disappearing. And I'm like, what's that about? To have fingerprints disappear on all
fine-grained skin. Yeah. Well,
You
you've
know,
got
it's
the long, intuitive, good with detailed fingers,
yeah.
thinking air sign hands. Yep.
Yeah. I laugh about it though. And I'm like, gosh, I wish that lady hadn't retired because I'd go back and look at it and go, why are my fingerprints gone? They go to do it and they're like, the computer can't even find them anymore. I have to go in with 5 pieces of a government ID to prove who I am because
Oh my
they're
goodness.
disappeared. Yeah, the computers don't do it. They can't get it. So I always
That's pretty
laugh. I
funny.
mean, and to me it's so beautiful because you've mastered two different very hard subjects, you know.
Once you get into the divinatory arts, it's like, playing a tuba and then learning how to play a French horn, and maybe you pick up a violin. It's very different, but you know music.
Right.
And it's learning different skills. So I also read cards, but they all work together to help me. Like, how can I stock my toolbox to be
Hmm.
fully present to the person in front of me? And but so you're learning systems, and I lucked out in some really interesting teachers when I was young, and then I took it from there, and worked with it. And the more you work with it, the more your clients teach you. And it's
So
been
talking
decades.
about cards, how did you ever think to take astrology and put it in an oracle deck? And then
Well,
how the heck did you do it? That's
it was
mind blowing.
interesting. It
This is my
was,
realm.
it is such a power. There are such powerful symbols, and I was
Yeah.
looking at all these different oracle decks, and I'm working on another one of my own, but that I don't know if it'll ever get published because it's a little complicated for the publishers. But I figured, the how you work with an oracle deck is you build a powerful pile of symbols,
Hmm.
and then people that have three-dimensional meanings, a gift, a challenge, and the practical side. And then you find a way, and then people's synchronicity, like they choose the right cards for what they need to think about this time. And
Right.
and astrology, I'm so already loaded with this knowledge of the symbols, and I find that the biggest gap for people when they're trying to study astrology is the language. They just don't. There's too many terms. There's too many words. Like they don't know what it means. Like, oh, would it go? Just too much. That
Hmm.
the entrance into it is a little steep for them. Um,
Right.
but if they just pick a card a day, or pick a card when they have a question, or pick 3 cards, which is how I like to do it.
Hmm.
And they'll find that by reading it in the book, the booklet that comes with it, and then if they've got more questions to take it deeper, that
Right.
they learn one piece at a time, one symbol, and all the words begin to work together. And then next time they go to listen to an astrologer or look at a book, it makes more sense because they've been using the terms. So it could be like flashcards if you're learning, but it's
Hmm.
a way to kind of develop an individual relationship. And so it's have all the planets, all the 5 major asteroids, the houses, and conditions like dignified, retrograde. I also put the sun's effect because, for instance, the sun right now is the one thing we can't control in astrology or predict. The
Oh.
sun can get very, very active, like it is at the moment. We're seeing solar flares, and usually that turns the volume up on history, and all the
Hmm.
aspects seem to have more charge.
Okay.
Or we can turn it when the sun is very, very quiet and it's hard to make political change, and we have our immune system lowers, and it was very, very quiet during the pandemic, for instance. The sun was an unusually quiet phase, and now it's at an unusually active phase. The mid
Right.
60s, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the sun was really high volume, was
Okay.
hot, very active, and so it just has more. It's like turning up the heat under jumping beans. So like we all get
Okay.
more activated. So those cards are in there. A few other some of the aspects to begin to get the feeling for them. And so for astrologers who already know all the terms, they don't really need the book. They can look at my version of it, but they can use it, and it's a powerful symbol system in and of itself. For those
Right.
that don't know astrology, you can just use it as an oracle deck, and it will begin to teach you those terms.
I love that. I love that. I love how you've done that. I love how you've put this, not just so much thought into it, but to really educate too.
And
which
the
is
book
beautiful.
that goes with it
Yeah.
is this. It's a book that just came out this summer. It's the book I've been trying to write for decades for my clients, to empower them to read their own chart. And so it's an entrance level into it, but it's real astrology. It's not like introductory to astrology, but it's kind of a gentle ramp in. And I set it up the same pattern as the book that goes with the cards, so you can cross-reference it. Like if you want to know a little bit more about that card, you can go and look in the book and
Right.
get information from both sides.
I love that. That's mind-blowing, because again, to me, astrology is very hard. Just because there's so much. There's just
right.
And for
That's
myself,
why you take it one card
I
at a
don't know if
time.
I want to put one more thing into this lifetime.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh,
you don't. I mean, you could just use it just as an oracle deck, and
Yeah.
just notice that the terms become a little bit more familiar, but you don't have to do anything else with it.
Yep. And I love that. I love that, because you did incorporate it also as that oracle deck. You used it as, and that's one reason why I really love this deck, is because you can use it to teach or to learn. You can use it as an oracle deck. You can use it for astrology readings. It's so versatile.
Yeah, I gather some astrologers lay out their chart using the cards, and
wow.
which is a lovely thing, or a way, if you want to learn your own chart, you can put the houses out and put the planets in place and just see what it says to you. That gives you a visual for people that are very visual.
Yep. And that's how I teach people to read oracle cards. Kelly, the owner and writer of The Edge, always goes, she loves it because she tells people, DeEtte takes the book and does this. She throws it over.
Right.
And I do. I mean, some decks you have to open the book and you have to look. You know what I mean? If I want to learn, I'm going to open your book and I'm going to learn about it. But for me, you made a card. You made a card that I can look at that and get so much. Exactly what an oracle deck is supposed to be.
Exactly. I worked really carefully with my wonderful artist, but I gave him, this is the symbols I want. This is the energy I want. I want these patterns in the background. I want you to, so that this is the feeling that it has to impart. So for each card, we did that.
And I just love it. I love it because
wonderful.
they bring out so much
stand
more.
by itself. So good.
It can stand on so many different ways by itself. So many ways, and I think that's one reason I really want people to be reintroduced to this deck and say, go get this deck. This deck is it looks, I'll tell you what, when I look at the image, I go, oh, my inner self, that science person in me goes, no. But the minute you open it up, it's like, wow, there's a whole world in here.
There is a whole world. And when you look at that on the cover, it looks fancy, but it's really just a compass.
Yeah.
And a compass just reminds us, what direction are we heading, and gives us feedback so we can choose our own path. And that's the only thing you really need to take from the front.
I know, but then I see 3 compasses, and then I see the layers, and then for me, because I'm trained to look at it, I start to see those layers, and I'm going, wow, the depth that's in this, it's just mind blowing. I love it. So where do you see astrology going to over the years coming to? Does that make sense to you?
The field of astrology, or what's coming up astrologically?
No, the field astrology.
Yeah.
With the field.
There's been a real resurgence of traditional astrology and lots of different arguments on the systems. And it happens every generation, because we're kind of heady people, like, as you said, it looks complicated and scientific, and that's going to bring in a certain type of person. Those that can add their heart and intuition to that pattern I think are wonderful astrologers, whatever their system is. Everybody's going to have a different take on it. It's like we're all, it's like if you're looking at the elephant from the right side, you're going to see one thing. From the left, you're going to see another. Everybody's got a little different take on it, but all the pieces fit together.
Right.
There's a big difference between Western astrology that we start with 0 Aries at the first day of spring, and those that follow the stars.
Mhm.
What is it? 5,000 years ago, the vernal equinox and the constellation Aries were an exact lineup. Aries has shifted a bit in position to that. Just it's off like half a sign now.
Right.
And there's a big argument over, are you really an Aries? Are you a Pisces? Because there's a timing on this. And I say, develop a system and study it. The universe is infinite. Their
Mhm.
system works consistently within their system. I just wish we didn't have the same name for it. I am an earth-based astrologer, so I'm always going to start my zodiac from the beginning of from the first day of spring. That
Right.
vernal equinox is where 0 Aries hits and where all the planets fit. The ram out there, what do the stars know about a ram? It has
I
nothing to
know.
do with the constellation, but it's
Right.
our understanding from our earthly existence of what those stars pattern make, because the ram was such a good symbol for what that energy felt like. So I
Right.
don't think there's a wrong way. And I think if we cannot argue with other people about what's the right and wrong way, but go, does my system work for me? Let me test it out. Let me look
Right.
at all these different charts of the people I know and love and see how it manifests. Then we can keep our hearts and our minds connected. I think there's
Mhm.
this infusion of old skills that, because so many people have been translating, Project Hindsight has been doing, and others translating some of the very oldest astrologers. And I think it's wonderful that we're adding new depths and new subtlety and new systems. But I don't think that oversees what we see in the connection from the planets directly. What's happening now, and what do I see in front of me? What's happening on the maps? What's happening in the moment? You know, and what do I see in the charts of the people around me? So
Right.
as long as we can use those theories in service of my being present to this world, then they
Mhm.
work, then they're helpful.
Right.
Some people get lost in them. So just
Mhm.
kind of, I would ask everybody to keep their heart and mind together here.
Right. Now, I'm a firm believer if more people followed astrology, we'd probably be running a lot better as a race, as a people.
As
Even your
humans,
eyes got real big, like,
I think that if we kind of like we follow the flow of the plans and we think, oh, how can I best use this time? I think
right.
we'd be, we look at someone and we go like, you are full of potential, not you are my prejudgment. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and 110%, because I honestly do believe when I was a nurse for 21 years, I was there during HEPA, when HIPAA
Mhm.
came in, HIPAA
Mhm.
came in. And that people didn't realize that was not just about your information as a privacy. It also carried into the healthcare, to where I, being a nurse, could only give my CNAs so much information that they needed to know to take care of you,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
which also meant my doctor knew more about this patient than I did, because he only told me so much that I needed to know to take care of them. And I was a firm believer that the more somebody knows or is educated, the better they can handle a situation and the better they
I
can take
agree.
care of something within life. You know what I mean?
I
Um,
agree.
and I feel that, although astrology, because it's something there that somebody can study and learn, or even computer generate at this point, I do feel like you're always going to have that person that's going to go to the more negative reasons to use it. But I honestly think that if people see it as a beautiful tool to know how to navigate the situation today, or to know how to get just to navigate people, sometimes can really
Mhm.
help, because
I
this,
agree.
I don't want to talk about the election because I'm not a political person in any way, shape, or form. But I also think just the situations at hand, the election was a large one. If people would have followed astrology on that, right now it's still going through some stuff. And if people would follow astrology,
Oh,
you
it's
know,
gonna be getting intense.
yeah,
Um,
it's going to get
I
more,
there the two Neptune and Saturn have been in Pisces, and in Pisces, the gift of Pisces is spirituality, and there's a lot that's been happening in the spiritual world for the
Right.
last 14 years, while Neptune's been in Pisces, and while Saturn's been in Pisces. But the challenging side of of Pisces is getting lost in fantasy rather than seeing reality. The gift side of it is that you can often see a deeper reality if you're choosing to listen carefully, but you can also get lost in fantasy, and that's your choice point in Pisces.
Right.
I think that the misinformation, the kind of going off on a theory rather than finding out what actually happened and who somebody actually is, but having a belief system that not helps you understand reality, but prevents you from seeing reality, in so many different ways, through through social media, that's been a challenge. But they're about to go into Aries, and that is action oriented. Last time Neptune went into Aries was the first day of the Civil War. In 1861, and many other countries did not use it for a civil war. There's lots of ways we can use that, but it is
Right.
like, I need action now on a problem. And so we're moving into, and it's going to go back and forth this year, and then thoroughly there in 2026. And I had hoped that it would be action on climate change, because we need action now on
We do.
climate change. And if we don't, we have other consequences. But this process of so it will be taking people out of this sort of dreamy realm and into action. How wise that action is will be up to us.
Right.
And there are many different ways it can play out.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that people think of it as taking action to heal the world, taking action to understand each other, taking action to solve problems. But that's up to us how we do it.
It's so beautifully. I love how you stated all that, because in my realm, everybody comes to me because they want the same questions that you get. And I always simply state, because mine is about manifestation, about prayer, about spirit. And I tell people, when you've got one person praying for change and praying for problems to be solved, and then you have a nation doing the same thing, and then literally a world, because the world's been praying for America for a long time, you're going to get that. You know what I mean? We've manifested whatever is here. Now, how are we going to deal with it?
Right.
Positive or negative, because you never know how it's going to turn out. We've kind of brought it in, and now it's, which way do you want to go with it?
Absolutely. One of my best teachers that I ever had as a spiritual teacher was a funny old former priest named Father Rizzo. And I think he may have still been a priest, but barely. He had worked in the Amazon for a long time and worked with indigenous healers and prayers. And he was the best hands-on healer I have ever seen. He looked like a little round Buddha belly, and but he would say, here, this is the moment that makes a difference between passivity and activity. He said so many of the people he's dealt with were in pain because they were holding on to the past. It should have been different. It shouldn't have happened that way, and we're trying to exert their will. If it happened, it happened. There's nothing we can do to change the past.
Right.
All of that energy stuck on coulda, woulda, shoulda, or it shouldn't have, causes illness in the body.
Right.
He said, but the people that accept the past can be passive about the future. He said, this is the turning point. You can work like hell to make the next day better and to solve your problems and to engage your will and take everything you've learned to make it better. And this is the dividing point. And I thought I have to remember that when things go south, or, okay, that happened. Now what? How can we learn from that and make it better? And not get caught in that. That was a real help to me, I think, and that I worked that into my my readings, not
I love it's so beautifully stated. It really is beautifully stated. But it also brings me back to, you know, how they always say the past repeats itself. And I'm always wondering
If
if
we
it is
don't learn from it.
yeah, if we don't learn from it, it's going to
Mhm.
repeat itself. And unfortunately, we seem to keep having these wars every so many years. We have pandemic every 100 years, and it's like, when are we done? When, you know, all I can say is that after this last pandemic, and so many people became very spiritual, and I truly believe it's not because it was in the stars. I truly believe it's because they binged all the things on Netflix and they had nothing left to do, so they opened a book. I went, wow, okay, we'll
That's
go with
beautiful. And they had time to introspect. You
and
know,
they
so
had the
many people
time.
that had time, and they had some near-death experiences.
Yeah,
Someone they knew nearly died, or they might have. And
yeah,
all of that brings you back to, why am I here, and what's worth living for, and how can I make the most of this?
yeah. And I know a lot of people are going to probably crucify me for this, but I said, wow, pandemic, what a gift it was to us. And people go, what? And I'm like, well, not the disease portion of it, but, you know, to be able to be, you know, to go home and to sit there and to have time and just to be. You know, and granted, the first few weeks it wasn't that way, but after the first 6 months, that's where you finally got to. You know, most people got to that point of just being, you know. So to me, the pandemic ended
Your
up being a
Scorpio
gift.
moon would love that, you know,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it's like, if those that had an introspective or introverted side to themselves, because you have both very strongly,
yeah.
um,
Oh, well, that would
are
explain why I double masked and went to Walmart every day.
right. That you need both. Like, you could use that, you know, some true introverts were like, "Yes, pandemic, I love it," you know, but that the the time of both, you know, I was in New York as it closed down. I was
Oh,
in New York that week, I came home with it, and we had a close call. But
wow.
it was in March of 2020. I was there, it was wide open when I got there teaching a class, and then by the end of that week, everything was shut down and there wasn't a mask to be found, and the
Oh,
sirens were going. And it was powerful to witness that shift.
mm-hmm.
I felt like I am here watching history,
Yeah,
and I was, you know, someone said, "Well, shouldn't you have known better? Why were you in New York at that time?" And I was like, "You're right. I should have known better." My family's still mad at me for going there, but it was. I'm really glad I saw that turning point in history, and
mhm.
there was part of my chart that was taking a risk,
Right.
and
And see,
I
I
own it.
think it's beautiful. Yeah, I think it's beautiful because I think everybody's got their story with it. Like for myself, I retired from nursing February 20th or February 10th of 2020.
Wow, good
Yeah.
timing.
I've
Careful
retired
timing.
that day.
Mhm.
And I was listening to Spirit. I was listening to my daughter because Spirit was telling me, Dad, don't sign up for so many events. And I went, but this is my livelihood. And I'm fighting with my guides quite literally until I finally went, okay, I'll get rid of half of them. And they took away half and they laughed at me like the rest are going. And
Yep.
then I put nursing on top of it because everything was telling me to do this. And then that happened. I went, I listened. And where did you put me?
Right, right, yeah, it was a
But
scary time.
it was. Well, how can people find you, Miss Heather?
You can Google Starcodes, you can, Roan Robbins, my middle and last name, .com, you can find me anywhere, RoanRobbins,
Mhm.
and you can, yeah, and or Google Starcodes, and you'll find me on Facebook and Instagram. I send out a daily kind of comment and a weekly comment. I'll be starting a YouTube channel and a few other things that are coming up. And they can, you know, the book, and I have some interesting new stuff coming up this year. But I just love being present for people in any way I can. I live on Zoom, so I get to have clients all over that's one of the other things the pandemic gave us.
Mhm.
No one knew how to use Zoom. A few people knew how to use Skype, but
Right.
it's so much better than just a phone call reading, though I do those too. I got good at hearing through the
Right.
phone, but it is so easy to be present with this, to use Zoom, to talk to people all over the world. And after the pandemic, everybody knows how to use it.
Yes, they do. They do. Well, I hope many people come and find you and just know how brilliant you are and detailed you are. And wow, all I can say is wow, you know.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to work with you today, DeEtte.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody else, I will see you guys next Monday morning here on School Through Spirit with DeEtte. See you soon, guys.
Bye.
There are psychic mediums, but there is nothing like DeEtte. Let's face it, we all struggle time and again. But if you seek the clarity you deserve, then you need to seek DeEtte. As a master teacher, DeEtte studied under international psychic medium Lisa Williams. Together, they not only help DeEtte better tap into spirit, but also build a long-lasting relationship. So many psychics tell us what we want to hear, and that just won't cut it with DeEtte. She tells you what you need to hear. No sugarcoating here. To book a reading with DeEtte is simple. Just visit her website, DeEtte.us. That's DeEtte.us. And follow the Yellow Brick Road to connect with DeEtte. Don't just sit there and ponder those questions. Ask them and let DeEtte guide you every step of the way. You need insight now, and DeEtte can help. Just visit DeEtte.us. That's DeEtte.us.